we talk about how bad of a loss this was for Alabama. I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to Brent Venables and Oklahoma's coaching staff being able to pull off this massive upset win at home because Brent Venables, let's be honest, if there ever was a time where he needed a win the most, it was tonight. Because before this game, there was a lot of hot seat talk around Brent Venables. There's a lot of pressure on him to nail his new offensive coordinator hire. Because if Oklahoma isn't better next season, he could get canned. And they just gave this man an extension right before the season. So for Oklahoma's season to be as bad as what it's been this year, for them to come out with this win is incredibly huge. Oklahoma now is going to be bowl eligible, and there's a good possibility that you beat LSU next week, because if you're running the ball like this on Alabama, you're going to be able to do the same thing against LSU's, whose run defense is even worse than what Alabama's is. And Jackson Arnold has shown that he's a really good runner, and LSU has struggled against dual threat quarterbacks all year long. So you beat LSU, you're at 7 wins. And then whoever you play in your bowl game, you can get the 8 wins if you're able to beat them. So what looked like what could have been the worst season that this program has had in 26 years could turn into a season that gives you a lot of optimism going into 2025. Because tonight, with all of the playoff expectations that Alabama had and how well they played the last couple of games, for Oklahoma to win this game, it shows that they can compete in the SEC, because they were last in the SEC standings prior to this loss. They have been the doormat of this conference all year long. And I had really high expectations for the Sooners coming into this season. I felt like this program has always been built to compete with the best of the best in this conference. And despite how things have transpired this year, I still feel no differently. They still recruit at a top 10 level. They have a really good NIL backing, and I believe Brent Venables is a really good defensive mind, as we saw tonight in this game with the way that he was able to completely neutralize Jalen Milroe. We saw Jalen Milroe a few weeks ago go for 185 on the ground and 4 rushing touchdowns. It's really hard to stop this man, and Oklahoma won this game straight off defense. And it's really hard to win any game in the SEC with the fashion that Brent Venables has had to this year, with all the injuries that they've had up front. This is the best their offensive line has played all year. They've had numerous starters out at every position: wide receiver, offense, defense. I mean, they got so many freshmen playing that aren't ready to play, but they've had to be thrown into the fire due to how many injuries they sustained. Oklahoma's season was pretty much over before it even started. Once they walked out of fall camp, all of their top guys were injured. And it's hard to win in this conference, no matter how bad of an opponent you may be facing with these high amount of injuries. So for Oklahoma on senior night to go out on top and give their seniors something to hang their hat on is a huge accomplishment for Brent Venables that kind of cools out the hot seat talk, because at least now Oklahoma can say, okay, like, our first season in the SEC was tough, but at least we were bowl eligible, because this is a tough conference. This is a grind. And to be able to overcome, everything that Brent Venables has had to with the criticism, the disappointment due to the high expectations, and to still be bowl eligible in a season where there wasn't really nothing to be hopeful about for the future with him, I give him props for this win. You feel me? This is a tough conference, and Oklahoma had a really unlucky season. I mean, with all the injuries they had, if a lot of those guys were healthy, they probably end up, in maybe a situation where they got 8, 9 wins. Not saying this is an excuse for everything that's gone wrong for them, but come on, man. You know how hard it is to win in this conference with all of these injuries against a lot of teams that are really good with stacked rosters.